Hey there, welcome to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. I'm joined here today with Casey Fain. Casey is the pastor of the Fold Church here in Gainesville, which I am a member of. Casey also ran for county commissioner here in Cook County.
Yes, sir.
So, Casey, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks? Tell them a little bit about yourself and the
Yeah,
church here and that sort of stuff.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, my name's Casey. Again, I'm the pastor of the Fold here. I've been a pastor for 11 years. I have been married 16. I have 5 children from the ages of 11 to 10 months now. And I did run for county commissioner at the beginning of this last year. And so it was a really fun opportunity. I've always had a desire to be involved in politics, but also to affect change for the sake of the gospel. And so I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. That's why I ran.
All right. Well, you certainly have your hands full with those five boys.
Yes.
So they're a blast, and I know that they keep you busy. And I believe the youngest one was actually born kind of during around the campaign.
Yes. Yeah. So before voting even transpired, he was born in February 20th.
Yeah. So so here at the fold, one of our members came forward and brought forth some voting data. So and it showed in the primary that um, only about 30% or so of our members actually voted.
Right.
And we managed to turn that around. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the last, I would say, year, as we've been in this voting season, really been trying to encourage the church to get more educated, to attend different meetings of different political events. I'm trying to get um, our church to really understand the importance of voting during the primaries, because that's something that I learned in the last 2 years. That's very important, and didn't really realize so. And so when I found out that our voting turnout was less than the state average, I was kind of like, that's not good. Like, I've been trying to encourage, like, go vote. You need to vote. You need to be involved. Um, and so after I'd found out the statistics of our voter turnout, I kind of, in a gracious way, but got on to the church because I felt like that was something that is so very important for us. And what was really awesome during the general election to see that we had about a 98% turnout from the church. And so that was absolutely amazing to see. And really wanting to see our church get more involved in politics, get more aware and educated, and understand how important it is and how beneficial it is for the church to be a voice, as it should be, in politics.
So in the 30-ish%, that's actually the number of most Christians who actually vote
Right.
on a regular basis. Why is it important for Christians to get out and vote?
So the importance is that all legislation is moral. All legislation is and has some moral implication in it. And so for Christians to sit back and say that we're going to leave the secular and the political um, to the non-churched is, I think, a negligence of duty, in my opinion, especially in the democratic republic in which we live, that the voice of the people is what dictates the representatives, and also they should then reflect the heart and the voice of their constituents so as to implement moral, good, just laws in our country. And so if the church is silent, which 30% tells me it's silent, um, if the church is silent, then everything that we don't want to happen happens culturally because the church is not being involved and not having a voice to affect legislation. And so you have a church who complains about voting, who doesn't care about voting, and then you have a church who complains about the culture, and then doesn't really want to do anything to affect the culture. And so you have this lazy church that doesn't really care, in my opinion, about affecting change in our culture, whether that be primarily, as it should be, the gospel, preaching the gospel, proclaiming the gospel, to see that we are kingdom minded first, but also to understand that if the kingdom and the wisdom of God and the culture of kingdom isn't being preached, which in a lot of churches isn't, and isn't being proclaimed by Christians and isn't being evidenced in our politics, why would the culture listen? Why would the culture care about anything moral? And so I think it's drastically important for the church to be involved. And I think we're in the state that we are in, part and parcel to the fact that the church has been so quiet.
So we went from the primary from 30% or so
Mm-hmm.
to really in the upper 90%, 98% or something
Right.
like that in the general election. What would our country look like? What would our county look like if 98% of the Christians voted?
So it's a double-edged sword. I think we don't want people to vote just for the sake of voting. I think we need educated voters. And so even in that 30%, I don't think everyone that's voting is educated. And so I think what needs to happen first is that the church leadership and pastors and elders of churches and whatever denomination you're part of, it doesn't really matter. If you're Protestant, Catholic, I don't care in this realm because we're all desiring um, a moral improvement to our culture. That if we do not get involved, then we're going to have a vast amount of issues. So, if we had 98, 100% of all Christians voting, you would have moral laws, righteous laws, to where things that are depraved and evil and wicked in the sight of God would not be allowed in our culture. Um, Abortion would not be something that we're trying to fight back. It would be abolished, like slavery. It would be totally done away with. And so there's so many things that could affect unanimous change across the entire country if Christians would actually vote morally and elect people on a moral basis that they can affect change. Now, they don't necessarily have to be the most righteous, amazing people that you're voting for. They have to be people who will do what they say their constituents put them in office to do. And so if they don't do what they say they were going to do, get them out and get new people in. But the problem is people don't vote. And so now you're stuck with the same people over and over and over again who are not faithful to their word, who will not affect change, and who could care less about the moral implication of being passive. And so if we had a church that was educated and that voted according to the gospel and according to the scripture and according to that which is righteous and true, oh my goodness, it'd be a proverbial utopia, because you have righteousness prevailing and reigning in the land. I mean, it would be amazing.
So, so you ran for county commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what kind of prompted you to run. What did you learn from that? And are you going to do something like that again?
So, what had prompted me is I've always had a desire to be politically active. And really, because of where I'm located in our county, it was an opportunity because the incumbent, been there for over 18, 19 years, which is kind of insane. I don't think anyone should be in any political office for that long. And so I saw it as an opportunity. Um, Timing maybe not the best for my family, but I saw it as an opportunity, and because I wanted to affect change, and I thought this would be the time to try and step into the arena, in the political arena. So that's what kind of motivated me. I've always had a desire. I saw this as a prime opportunity, and so I went for it. I learned a whole lot. Um, I learned so much from attending different political meetings, going to different forums, studying and preparing for those forums is where really I learned a lot. Also, going to the county commissioner court meetings and listening to those meetings. I think pretty much all court meetings are probably online now, so you can actually attend without having to go, and that's amazing. So to be able to learn and look at the process and see the ups and downs and see the political maneuvering and to be able to just understand how your county works and how government in your local government works is was very educational, and I'm glad that I went for it and tried. Did not succeed. I wish this could be a success story, right? Being sworn in yesterday, that would have been cool. But what I see in this opportunity was to affect change, and that's something. And even with a county commissioner, right? It's not like a huge moral shift necessarily in our culture, but I think there's a spiritual impact of covering, a spiritual covering that can come when you have righteous, godly people involved. Um, Not saying I'm the greatest or the most perfect, but I'm a Christian and I believe in the righteousness of Christ that He has imparted. So, will I do this again? I think so. Yes, I have a desire to see and affect change, and I want to lead by example, and so that's why um, that was a big impetus of why I ran as well, because I wanted to motivate our church. I wanted our church to be aware that there can be change and there can be things that can be affected by the church. And so that was a big reason why, and I think a reason why I will again.
And so I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the things you've learned and the fact that sometimes people, you mentioned being an educated voter,
Mm-hmm.
and that you mentioned something to me one time about folks maybe voting like it's like a popularity contest versus the
Yeah,
substance. Tell us a little bit about that.
that's definitely something I learned in this. I when I looked at the people that I was running against, and we had a crowded field for running, and that was difficult in itself because it splits the vote so much. And that's something we need to be aware of when we're voting in the primaries, right? We need like one, two good guys running in the primary, otherwise you're not going to get the best candidate. Um, and so we had a crowded field, and what I noticed in how the votes went, and I can proudly say, I don't think there's a single member of my church that was in my that was in my district, was in my area that could vote for me. So I to be able to get hundreds of votes without that was pretty cool. Um, but to be able to go and see how people voted was basically just off of who they knew. It had nothing really to do about attending forums to see what the stance of the person speaking or running was. It wasn't about going and seeing what ideas or ideology or perspective or plan that they wanted to implement. People voted based off of who they knew. And so in smaller towns, that's what you're going to see a lot. And so that's like an uphill swing because I'm not originally from this county, and um, my precinct that I was running in don't know a whole lot of people, and so that was a big hindrance. And so that definitely gave me a lot of food for thought on how to run again. So it was very educational. It was a little disheartening to see people just voted based off of who they knew, and not based off of, in my opinion, not based off of the stance or the position or the ideas of the person running. And so I think what will have a big impact for people, especially Christians, is to actually get educated, to attend forums, listen to speakers, go and see who am I voting for, and actually get educated before you vote.
Yeah, very good. So I do want to thank you personally for jumping in the arena and doing that. It takes a lot of
Yeah,
courage to
thank
put
you.
yourself out there that way, and so I'm glad that you did that. So, if folks want to kind of keep in touch with you, learn more about you, I know you have a podcast.
Hmm.
So tell the folks how they
Yeah,
can learn more about you.
absolutely. If you want to hear me and my wife talk and discuss things that most Christians don't necessarily discuss, maybe big questions that Christians have that aren't necessarily broached in most church sermons or church Bible studies, we cover on our podcast. And so our podcast is called Delve, Spirit, and Truth. And you can find us on just about any platform. And so we talk about everything that is involved with the church. And so a lot of different nuances, have a lot of different guests. And it's been a lot of fun to start that this last year as well. Or you can learn more about our church. You can go to The Fold in Gainesville, Texas. We have a Facebook, we have a YouTube, we have an Instagram. So those are the ways in which you could learn more about us. And we have a website, obviously, The Fold Church. So,
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Casey. This has been really good. Always great
awesome.
to hear from you.
Yes, thank you.
So, again, this is Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. I'm joined with Casey Fain, the pastor of the Fold. And thanks for joining us, and God bless you, and God bless Texas.